Well, there is that.
All right, going live now.
Going live as our conversation at some point will be live. Probably by now, right?
Should be close, yeah.
All right. Just talking behind the scenes about the weird delay in starting. Hello, everybody. This is Through with Therapist Eyes on YouTube Live. We are here every Thursday night about 6 o'clock or so. It's a good way to connect with us, engage with us, in the chat box and stuff. So we have our, month of March review, which is actually going to be kind of a weird review listening out there because we had, it's through the sickness, we missed a show, and then we had The Bachelor, which is really cool to review and talk about, but we kind of went and took a deeper dive on the topic the second show. So I think the third show, we don't have one, so we're going to do actually a diagnostic show. So if you're live with us and you want to know about a particular diagnosis, I told the guys to back of their head cook something up, what they might want to hear about. We'll take a little bit of an education dive on a particular diagnostic. I hadn't done a diagnostic show, Neil, like on a specific diagnosis, like except for ADHD for like a long time. Do you remember the last time I did like a diagnostic show? Was it schizophrenia? Yeah, that sounds about right, actually. Yeah. So don't pick Jack schizophrenia and don't pick ADHD.
That was my one because I actually had.
Don't do it.
Dang it.
Don't do it. So we're getting ready to roll here in just a minute. But how you doing? Jack's hanging out with us. How are you, sir?
I'm tired. How are you?
I'm a little bit brain dead. My schedule's been busy this week. I don't know what
Me too.
the heck the deal is.
Yeah, it's I don't know. End of month, I guess. Full moon, something like that.
I guess everybody's coming in before spring break, and nobody wants to like miss appointments. I don't know.
Man, I forgot spring break is
It's
coming.
there.
Up. Wow, I get
It's
to have
there.
the kid at home another week.
Easter,
Great.
like this
Oh
weekend.
yeah, because
Yay.
great. Yeah, it's good to be. That's what I was talking to someone on a meeting today. I'm like, my kids are older, but it's still weird when you're trying upstairs and you're working and you know your kids are downstairs, they're screwing around. I'm like, and with Mason being 18, it's like this is like the last spring break. It's like we haven't planned anything because it's just been a blur. But like, I just want to go downstairs, go hang out. Like,
I have totally developed like the parental Tourette syndrome.
Parental
stop.
Tourette.
No, don't quit. Stop.
it's like mute. Crap,
Yeah.
missed my mute. No.
That's funny. Parental Tourette's. Yes. Well, Jack, I'm in this weird stage of like, kids leaving. Like we're playing around with like literally empty house here.
Like
in
turning a
minute,
bedroom
and,
into a
like,
gym.
Turning the bedrooms into the reading room, and the gym is in the bonus room, and my TV viewing has really improved with a huge TV and a sound system. So, I mean, there's advantages for sure, yeah, but it's weird to say the least. So I don't do this on the podcast copy, but listener will have the show that you hear on the Spotify and Apple iTunes and stuff here in a moment when we turn the mics on for live. But what is your last name? Fortenberry, right?
Correct.
Okay, I was right.
Yeah,
All right, I
you got
wasn't
it.
sure. I was like, shit, what is his last name? 30 seconds ago, I was like, I got to introduce Jack. What's his
I
name?
just don't think it's weird that I actually knew a girl in high school with the last name Fortenberry, and I'm like, that is not a common name to run into with multiple people. I think she maybe spelled it differently, but yeah, it's a very odd name to have.
It is an odd name.
Two
It's a
people.
cool name though. It's not bad. It makes me think of like in the Captain Crunch, the berries that are
you're
eaten.
you're
Like,
a Captain Crunch villain.
Are you a Captain Crunch filling? Yeah. You ever have been picked on for that?
Guys, let's not talk. I'm fasting. So
Oh.
right now, like Captain Crunch sounds amazing.
Delightful.
Yeah.
Okay, well.
Let's keep it away.
Okay,
from
We
well,
won't talk about the Crunch Berries. It's okay.
Please, oh gosh, they have a cereal that's just Crunch Berries too.
Oops.
Hey, here's an idea,
Oh,
Neil.
Crunch Berries.
How about we go live?
Yeah, it sounds good.
Okay, go.
All right, ready?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
Hello, this is March the 28th, and we are doing the March month in review here on Through a Therapist's Eyes. So welcome to this evening. Nice to have you aboard. This is where you get insights about mental health and substance abuse therapy topics usually with a panel of therapists, but it's not the delivery of therapy services in any way. On the month in review, we have Mr. Neil that comes out behind the curtain. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm busy this week.
Yeah, me too, but
Yes.
that's okay.
I know, we've both talked about that. So he comes out and hangs out with us to review the shows that we did this month. And normally we have Adam Cloninger with us, and he... I would give an update to you that he is well. He's still dealing with his family issues. We appreciate any thoughts if you're a praying person. That too. He's doing well, and I'm not sure if we'll have him back at the end of April or not. So that is to be determined. But update on him. So in place we have for the second time Mr. Jack Fortenberry. And did I do the last name well?
Perfect.
I'm not gonna lie. I was wondering if I had it right.
You got it. You're good.
I won't lie. Thanks for coming back with us.
Yeah, man, pleasure.
And let me see. So what we're going to do today is a little bit of a different sort of month in review because in the month of March, I guess we had a weird month. As you know, if you've been following along, we had Ben Higgins hanging out with us for our show, and it was really cool to have him. And I know you were on last week, Jack, but did you hear when we were able to talk to Ben? Did you catch that episode or not?
I did not.
You did not? Okay, cool. Well, then it'll be cool to get your
yeah, for sure.
Your organic thoughts about what we would have expected and what we actually heard. So then we did kind of a deeper dive on the topic. So I feel like I told Jack we were going to do a review of the show, I guess. But also. The folks on YouTube Live may type in, and the third show is going to be like a diagnostic show. So I asked Neil and Jack to think in the back of their minds what unique diagnosis we might talk about because just to get an understanding of what the particular diagnosis is that they come up with. So that is what we're doing tonight. Contact us through at therapisteyes.com is how you connect with us. We also have First Horizon still with us. Neil, why don't you tell them about First Horizon? Let's see how you do in comparison to how Victoria has done with the intro of our sponsor.
I can't really compete with Victoria. She's pretty good at it. But yeah, First Horizon Bank, it's your local big bank, I guess you could say. They're small and personable. They start out of Memphis with about 330 branches, and they're great because it's a very easygoing branch to go into. The one around here, it's like you get all the services of the big banks, but you get the personality and the almost like a family environment of a small bank. So they're great. Anything you need, they can provide. They focus primarily on financial literacy, which means that when you come in and you don't know what to do, they'll definitely help you. And it's great for young adults or young kids that want to get started. Go open up an account. First
Horizon Bank, check them out. We do appreciate you for being with the show, supporting what we do. So this is the human emotional experience, and Jack is here hanging out with us because we endeavor to figure it out together, right?
We endeavor to figure it out together. I like that.
All right. Good. You've heard that before, I hope. We say that at every show. Anyway, for a lot of different reasons. So how do we start, Neil? I guess, reviewing again. I almost forgot. We're supposed to do, in Adam's honor, we have the game that we play on the the Through a Therapist's Eyes month in reviews. Adam takes us down a rabbit hole. So we call
it... taking down a literal...
a literal rabbit hole. Because it has a title. He mentioned the title. He's like, would this be okay if we talked about it? And I'm like, I have no idea what you just said, so... I'm going to say yes, but I don't know. I'm nervous. Neil, you want to give a qualifier or a preamble to this, or a parental warning, or you want to do a preventative thing, something?
I don't think we need it. It may sound inappropriate, but I don't think we need the parental warning.
So you got a level of trust here.
It sounds inappropriate, but it's fine.
You got a level of trust here. All right, let's go down the rabbit hole with Jack. What you got, buddy?
All right, so I'm going to preface this by saying, I love paranormal stuff. UFOs, ghosts, Bigfoot, all the stuff, right? Like ancient aliens, all that cool stuff, right?
All of the pseudoscience stuff?
Pseudoscience.
I had to say it, sorry.
Some pseudoscience. But this one's an interesting one that I heard, and I haven't heard it before, and I was listening to something, and it came up, and I was like, that's interesting. I'm going to have to remember that for the next time on this show. So I'm going to read a little bit because I forgot. It's been weeks ago, but
that's fine.
We're going to bring up Mel's Hole.
Mel's
Yeah.
Hole.
Yeah. So I'm gonna read a little bit about it, and then I want to hear what you guys think about Mel's Hole.
Mel's
So
Hole.
Mel's Hole is, according to an urban legend, a bottomless pit near Ellensburg, Washington. And it claims about it were first made on the radio show Coast to Coast AM in 1997 by a guest calling himself Mel Waters. Later, investigation revealed no such person was listed as residing in that area, and no credible evidence has been given since that the hole ever existed. However, the legend started on February 21st, 1997, when a man identifying himself as Mel Waters appeared as a guest on Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell, and Waters claimed that he owned rural property 9 miles west of Ellensburg in Catatis County, Washington, that contained a mysterious hole. And according to Waters, the hole had an unknown depth, and he claimed to have measured its depth using fishing line and a weight, although he still had not hit bottom by the time 80,000 feet of line had been used. He also claimed that the neighbor's dead dog had been seen alive sometime after it was thrown into the hole. So someone took this dog, it died, threw it in the hole. Next thing you know, it mysteriously came back to
We
life.
got Pet Cemetery here.
Exactly.
Oh
right?
my gosh.
So, so according to Waters, the hole's magical
Jack,
properties.
I'm curious where
Yeah.
we go with this, but we need the Entertainment Tonight voice, or what's the paranormal channel voice guy? The deep radio voice. Can we throw anything on like that in with this?
I don't think I'm gonna.
You don't got
I
it?
don't have a deep enough
You don't have
voice.
it- you don't
No,
have it
we
yet.
need John Nelson to come
we
in.
need
and
John
just do-
Nelson. We need something. Okay, go on with Mel's Hole here. This is a legit
Yes, you can
sort
actually.
of
Yeah.
what do you call it? Like there's like we should go to the West Virginia, the Mothman prophecies. You ever hear of this?
Mm-hmm.
So this is a legend, a urban legend kind of thing that's like legit. People believe this. Is that?
Yeah, it's
So-
actually, like I said, it's a big deal. Are you aware of Coast to Coast AM? It's been around for a long
I've heard
time.
of it. I don't listen to
Yeah,
it
with
much
Art
yet. but-
Bell, like it's been around for a long time, and usually late at night, like AM radio station.
Okay.
Right? But he
So
goes,
80,000 feet of fishing line, dog dead comes alive.
yeah, a lot of
down into this hole.
a lot of claims of a bunch of weird stuff and magical properties that this hole had, but apparently it doesn't exist, or does it? Because there's rumors that he sold the property to the United States government. The government came, filled up everything, kind of
Oh,
covered
they asphalted the hole.
covered everything up, and so yeah, that's Mel's Hole. I don't know if you guys heard that one.
Well,
before.
I hope I didn't interrupt you.
you did.
You sound like you had more.
Oh
going
man,
through
like
the-
I don't want to. There's so much to it that you do your own research, because it goes really deep and lasts for years and years and years. So it's a pretty hefty topic.
Well,
that you
what
can
are
get
some of the
into.
other things that might have happened with Mel's Hole? That is,
I think, I mean, they've heard.
because now you're starting to remember, right? And just
Yeah, I
about-
think they've heard like screaming and stuff coming from the bottom of this place, and like they put microphones down, and like I said, it's a lot of big conspiracy things in terms of, like I said, supposedly he sold the land, they covered it to the United States government, they covered it up and all this.
So what? So when did they supposedly sell the land? So how long was? So it was
97
talked
it was
about in
identified,
'97.
yeah.
When
Yeah,
was it?
And I think, wow. Okay, so someone told, a Native American said he told reporters in 2012 he visited the hole many times since 1961, and claimed the U.S. government maintained a top secret base there where alien activity. I mean, like I said, it goes.
It goes. It goes
and
down.
goes and
It
goes.
goes
Keeps
down
going,
Mel's
keeps
Hole, basically.
Yeah. So if anybody's interested, just do a, I guess do a Google search.
So the idea is what do I think about this clinically in therapy land? I'm curious, Neil. I mean, do you? Well, this is your thing. Do you buy this, Jack? Do you think this is a thing?
So my thought about all the paranormal stuff that I hear, like there's always, and it even goes back to, ancient times, right? So there's always a bit of truth in there, and it's usually way over exaggerated over time. So there might have been something there, but like to the extent that it goes, like I said, it gets crazy, like aliens, cover ups, government, like from this one hole, like
Right.
probably not, but
Right.
But I mean, and I think there might have been money involved too. So like it has a whole like con element to it as well. I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
I'm not a full believer in Mel's Hole.
Okay,
But it's a very very good story. I
it
recommend
is interesting. I never have heard of it before. Have you ever heard of this before?
No,
Neil?
no,
All
I've
right,
never
so
heard of
what
that
do you take? I mean, do you buy it?
I just want to know how big was the diameter of the hole? Like
He's
is
got
this,
questions.
Like, I'm like in my head, I'm like, is it just one of those things you just trip down? Like next, you know, you're down this. It's funny. Disney has a show called Gravity Falls, and it have a mystery shack. It's out of someplace in Oregon. It's crazy. It's like all sorts of urban legends and stuff. But they have a bottomless hole, and they all fall into it, and they just kind of just fall and fall and.
So
It's definitely it's just I don't know. I'm always intrigued by those things because you don't. When you think about how deep the Earth is and the fact that things could
absolutely.
happen, you know, the idea of even skiing and you fall down a glacial chasm or whatever, and like how far down that goes, it's like, so really,
that's the thing, that these things are amazing. You know, when you know, I've seen some of the same shows. I mean, I'm drawn to them. Urban Legend, and what is the one where you get things from space looking down on the Earth, unexplained Earth phenomenon or unexplained pictures on Earth, and then you know they do research into like what caused this crazy thing, and it's like, you know, thousands of crabs going across to the beach caused this crazy
right.
thing.
Yeah, crazy
Right?
science stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool to dig into it, but it's funny, Jack, because the clinical thing that I think about when I hear things like this is just the allure, the psychological allure that these things have, that people are so fascinated.
Well, my thing is, a lot of people label a lot of, especially nowadays, and I do want to address this, like very seriously address this, and I can prove it. So a lot of people today throw around the term conspiracy theorist like they're a bunch of like nuts, and yes, 80% of them probably are, but guess what? There are some real conspiracies that have happened that make you, you know, kind of sympathize with some of these people and be like, well, I mean, if they could do that, then they can do this kind of thing, you know?
They talk about now, like the difference between a conspiracy theorist and a real person is like 30 days or something now, like because of technology.
Yeah.
There's so
I
much
mean,
stuff out there, the information.
like
30 days. What do you mean?
It takes like, you know, they go from being a conspiracy theorist or a crackpot to all of a sudden now everyone knows that that's really what happened. Like a long time ago,
Oh, right.
it would be years of it for someone
The
to be a conspiracy
explanation
theorist. Yeah,
comes
you
in
actually
30
really
days.
prime example, Project MK Ultra. Are you familiar with that?
I am not.
The United States government was dosing random citizens and other
Oh,
members
yeah, absolutely.
with LSD.
Right.
And-
Years ago.
Yeah, 60s,
50s, 60s.
Yeah, for actually a lot longer than you would think.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine just going on the subway or something. Next thing you know, you get bumped into, and you think.
So
you're
there
going
were a
crazy.
little bit of particulars that went into that, as I understand it. They were purposely getting like parties and groups of people and studying them, and them not knowing that they were participating. So it
and
wasn't
then
randomly on the street, but there were definitely some things going on that were super nefarious.
And just like, you know, I don't know if you've seen that movie with Tom Cruise, like about how the United States government, you know, CIA sells drugs to fund some of their programs. Actually, fact, you know,
Yeah.
like
There are different things that are out there for sure, and I'm glad you went there with this, because you know, when you look at the Mothman prophecies or Mel's Hole, is cool, it's a new. To me, the interesting thing is how the psychology of it all
perception,
works.
right?
And perception is a powerful reality that we could do a whole show on. As a matter of fact, that'd be a good show to do, to talk about just, you know, perception and how that gets organized. Because I'll tell you, Jack, fear is a big component that drives people's exploration and full-on creation of layers and layers of things on top of, as you say, sometimes there's a nugget of truth that gets completely created.
And would you agree that, I guess, with the way media is today, that they've kind of come to the peak of utilizing fear in that kind of way?
100%. And I think that it's really almost a reflection more of the human experience.
Absolutely.
You know, because so much now we have an interactive reality, you know, with the media and the different service and platforms that we're on and we're engaged. And if you're mirroring the human experience, then you're going to find a whole lot of insecurity-based feelings. You're going to find a whole lot of fear. You're going to find a whole lot of of anger and those types of twisted sort of realities. I mean, think about it. If you can think of it, somebody has done it. Like you've heard that. We've all heard that statement. And I think that's like a straight up true thing. Neil, I can think of some pretty crazy things.
Quick,
You know?
real quick though, being a psychologist, there is one specific case that I would like you to do a little bit of research in, and then maybe we can talk about it if I come on or when I come on again next time.
Yep. Okay.
Look into the Ariel School UFO incident in Zimbabwe, Africa. It's
Yeah.
actually a real big Harvard psychologist actually went out there. A bunch of school kids saw something, and they all had the same story, which is very abnormal for kids that age.
Warning, I'm a pretty big skeptic.
No,
When it comes to
absolutely,
these
no,
sort
no,
of
no,
things.
absolutely,
Yeah.
and from your point of view, for the psychologist, because he was a legit,
Right.
high regard psychologist that thought this was interesting,
Went in to
there,
investigate it.
and then they started trying to take away his license, and it's very interesting. I would recommend doing some research on that.
I can check it out. You'll have to text me.
Yeah.
You know,
That'll be the rabbit hole for next week to see what you think about that one.
I don't know. Let's see about that.
It's very interesting from a psychology point of view because
Sounds like Peterson stuff. You know him from Canada or whatnot.
No, that's
Yeah.
different.
Is it
Peters is
different?
the whole nother thing in
Whole
itself.
nother realm.
But yeah.
Which we had before. All right, well, let's get in a little bit to our reviews. Thanks, Jack, for that. I appreciate.
problem.
You know, it's interesting stuff that I think people are fascinated by. And to me, I don't know if I came up with an answer by the way of it. It's not really an answer. It's just fun to kick around. You know, what's really going on with people because, there's a lot of it
and
that
how
that's-
easily people are influenced.
It's very easily influenced, and you think listening out there that you're not. I mean, you can begin to believe that these walls in here are gray, and if you look
Well,
around on YouTube,
Like witness accounts and court and
eyewitness
stuff, right?
accounts and jury trials, and how it's well studied. Groupthink in psychology with propaganda. Weapons of warfare, and we did it in the American Revolution. There's so much that goes on into the human mind, and people don't realize they're susceptible to it. It's the way fortune tellers do their work. I mean, there's
Mentalist and all these.
yes, mentalists and the interactionary features that they do, the cues that they take, and how they influence you. It's crazy stuff. It's psychologists have a good time. I do got to check though. I'm not a psychologist. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So as we're defensive about our stupid little territories with like marriage and family therapists. I'm a counselor. Well, I'm a clergy counselor. Well, I'm a social work counselor. So
That's like IT. I'm a developer. No, I'm a programmer. I'm a sysadmin. I'm a network engineer.
My job title is a solutions architect.
oh boy.
Like,
That means you do it all, whether you want to or
yeah,
not.
whether they're like,
Okay.
As do we. So we had a show, episode 265, Jack, with the Bachelor named Ben Higgins, and it was really cool to hang out with him. We did take a deeper dive on the topic that he was really kind of geared on with his book Alone in Plain Sight. He was like season 19 or whatever of the hit series, The Bachelor and stuff. But I was kind of, I just want to, okay, let me just sort of hit you cold, Jack. I didn't tell him, listening audience, that I was going to do this, but just your cold gut feel for what would you expect hearing that a therapy show has got a member of the cast, the Bachelor guy, on to talk about, a big topic of loneliness and feeling alone and developing connections with people and such. Like, how would you envision that going? Because you said you didn't hear that particular episode, so I'm curious what your impression would be, your gut feeling for that.
So my impression of having him on a show about
Right,
therapy,
right.
I think it'd be pretty interesting coming from a show that scripts the interaction between and how lonely you must feel being in that position,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I think that'd be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I'm curious, Neil, what you... I didn't think about that, and you were in the review. Did we review with you? We didn't. You were... Yeah, okay. This is the first time I get to ask you then. Yeah, what was your initial impression of what to expect with this, and then obviously you observing, the conversations with him. Curious what your take was.
I think it was very interesting. Like, one, I think the honesty that he came through with it was very refreshing when he talked about how much it wasn't really his thing, and by the end of it, he really didn't enjoy it. Like the once you realize it and you go through it, I think he enjoyed the experience. He said he'd do it again, but there were certain things you didn't really get to enjoy the moments after the show was done. You really didn't get to enjoy. You did the people that he hung out with after the fact. It wasn't really about relationships. It was about because you're the Bachelor. Everything that he did with the interactions, the people he interacted with, was always cheapened by the idea that they weren't really there.
That's why they wanted to talk to him.
Right. They wanted to talk to him because of he was on the show. And so that was always the thing he said. But he enjoyed it. I thought the fact that his experience, he talked about with all the things they do on The Bachelor, all the trips, that's what Victoria's question was, well, what did you like doing? And the surprising thing is he loved going back to his hometown because to me it makes sense. He was the hero of the town. You have a lot of people that that are now like saying your praises, and you're getting all this stuff about you, which was really cool. But then he also said Ireland was probably one of the most gorgeous places, and he loved going to a bar where you have a 20-year-old and an 80-year-old singing the same drinking song. And so I would say it was a lot deeper than I thought he would be. I think that was the biggest thing you take away from it, because you see such a shallow part of it with The Bachelor and all the stuff. But yeah, he was definitely more than I expected.
That's the phrase. I like the way that you said that. More than I expected. And I don't know what I really expected. I think, Jack, you were close to what I was expecting insofar as, like, here's a young man who's on I don't know, in my mind, it's kind of a crazy show. I mean, I don't want, falling in love with somebody on a show and getting married, engaged seems a bit crazy to me.
It's production.
Well, no, but it's actually a lot of emotion. It is a lot of emotion.
That's their job.
It triggers a lot. It brings up a lot, and I realize now kind of why. I mean, he shared that they're actually like seeing no outlets, no outside world. I mean, it's like a 6-month deal where you're alone with a small group of people, and that's all you got, And so I was curious and fascinated really with the idea of, in that setting, how are these relationships going to be forged? What happens in the progression of getting to know and really being, having to connect with the whole group? Because I like Survivor. I still am one of these weird people that watches the episodes of Survivor when it comes on, because I'm fascinated with group dynamics and how that works. So I was pleasantly surprised by the depth, though, of all the thoughtfulness he's put into this book, because he, being alone in plain sight and connecting with other people for his generation, which kind of is y'all's generation, a big deal. I mean, it's just the world of connection has absolutely flipped on its head like that in such a short 50-year time period. My adult life, 50 years. It is way magically different than Little House on the Prairie, right?
Do you think we'll ever see a cyclical moment going back to something like that?
I really don't, Jack, actually, because we have evolved, and with evolving, and I mean, unless you have like technology drop out on us, the natural disasters and whatever, like maybe the city of Atlanta is talking about, like, the Mothman prophecies or urban legend and whatever. Maybe if we go through something like that, yeah, absolutely. But short of that, like, no, we have evolved. We have things that are engaged now in the way that we operate. But there are some common truths about that will not change, because human emotional experience does not change that much. And so we took a deep dive on that with him and how to connect, and which is why, which I think I want to get into some of the book quotes about my friendship book that I intend to write in the future, because it matches with this, and I feel like we've already taken a deep dive on.
And can I say, just give him props of being able to take success on a TV show and then follow it up with a book or something. Like, that's kudos to him, man.
It's very impressive.
Yeah, kudos, man. I give props to where it belongs. And
I appreciate that, and I'm gonna, I have no problem selling it. YouTube Live, go to YouTube Live, and by the way, you have a job. If you like our content, please click the like buttons and do the subscriptions and tell your friends, because it really does help us to grow the show. But you'll see this on live. This is his book, Alone in Plain Sight, and I'm still reading it. I'm a slow reader, and I got into other things. I'm about halfway through. He has 4 sections, Jack. One is no longer alone. Reconnected to self, which is all about connecting to yourself before you connect to other people. Then no longer alone, reconnected to others. Part 2. Part 3 is no longer alone, reconnected romantically. And you hear the theme, right?
So he's almost
no
like
longer
providing
alone.
like a guide for people to like.
Part 4, connected with God.
Man, good for him, man. Good for
It's impressive. Seriously, the subtitle.
Because how many? I don't off the top of my head. I'm not a Bachelor watcher, but I'm like, how many people that have starred in that show go off to do other things?
Well, I think they probably do. I mean, I'm not in the community either. I think they do. I don't know that he's exactly unique.
We'd have to ask Victoria. She probably knows
but
all.
Victoria knows all of the.
But
yes,
have they
ins and
reached the level of being on through a therapist? You know what I mean?
outs. Right. I mean, I want to say the subtitle though. When you're seen but not known, guys. I promote things that I like or I think are important. Not because he's the Bachelor, not because there's anything special about him, but because he's genuine and he shares stories in in the content of this writing project, and because it's on point, the thoughts that he shares and that are shared in this book, with how to connect with people. I'm really impressed with it because it's such an important issue, and it's really parallel with what I talk about in therapy circles, which is why I want to get to some of my book quotes in friendship and how friendships work, because there's a lot of parallels. So, yeah, I'm just impressed with the young man. I don't know, Neil. What last time we talked, Victoria, John, and I on our own thoughts mixed in with what he had talked about. So I don't know what we do with this. Like I said, we're doing a review of the show. So help me out. What are some of the things that stuck out in your mind listening the whole month of March? With our questions, let me go with the questions first. How many times have you felt alone, even in plain sight and with others? I think you listening are going to be able to say freaking many. It's so common. Social media, does this help us, and how can it actually make us feel alone? We've talked about that on the show, and how do we get connected to others? Those were the questions that we were really, playing around with and whatnot, right? So what do you think, Neil?
I think I want to go back a little bit and talk about, will we ever go back to the way things were, which is that human actually having to have human connection, having to actually have that physical connection. And I think honestly, with the younger generations coming in, the problem we run into is those younger generations are so used to the technology being in our faces that they can't adapt. When we were younger and we had to go to school and we actually had to talk to friends and you call them on the phone, and Jack, you're in that generation where we still had the landlines calling people back and forth. Hey, I'll come over to your house. And
y'all had landlines. Awesome.
Right, exactly. That was around the time when we kind of stopped having some landlines. And so, I don't think our society is ever going to go back to it, but how do we adapt to it? One thing that Ben did bring up is with the social media comments, social media disconnects, but there's also times where he connects to people that he normally wouldn't. You still see your friends from high school, or
it gets demonized too much. But yeah.
Right, but the thing is, and the thing he brought up that was good, that I think we have to think about is because of seeing those posts and just saying, oh, that's cool, whatever, you think you are connected, which you kind of know more about them, but you're really not connecting because you feel like you've already put the work in. You've already kind of, hey, I posted on your comment, or I've said, hey, how's, that's a cool picture of snow he talked about. And then you're done. You don't make that effort to then call that friend to find out or go hang out. So it's a misnomer because you feel like you're connecting, but all you're doing is you're just another like or a comment. You're really not building that rapport or that so it is a misnomer, and it is great that you're more in someone else's life, but because you're in someone else's life, you feel like you don't need to take that time or that effort.
This is crazy because you're aware of things, but disconnected. Even more. It's like the awareness is very different than connecting. That's what my thought did when you were just listening to you. Can we be disconnected but aware? It's fascinating.
I think you can. I mean, I remember being like, I went to like 1 or 2 high school parties, and I was always the guy in the corner finding the other introverted guy, and
Yeah.
I was there and I was aware, but I was not connected.
Right.
Heavily not connected.
Right.
So state that question one more time, and I'll give you a pretty interesting perspective on it.
The question is, I mean, the journey that my brain did is being aware of things, right? You're aware of somebody from years ago that's now experienced this with their kids, or you become aware. I mean, Facebook, when I was on it, I just don't do it much no more, made me aware of somebody's birthday, right? But I'm not connected. So can you be aware of things and not connected nevertheless?
Well, so I would say I'm a more of an introverted person. Love my alone time. Have to have my alone time to, recenter myself. Which is the complete opposite of a musician that has to be on stage in front of a bunch of people and play all the time. So yes, totally. Like when I was playing in a group and we were touring, I think we did like 300 shows in a year one time. It was ridiculous. I'd be on stage and it was like a job, like you're on stage, you're around a bunch of people, day in, day out, but at the same time, like I wasn't connecting with anybody except, my bandmates, that was there.
Right. I mean, it's funny, like Johnny Carson. I'd like to use him as an example when we talk about like anxiety. He had social phobias and such. And this idea of being disconnected fits with that as well.
Yeah,
he was alone.
It's different because and this is the rationale I used with them, to explain to people like why I didn't stick around after. And
I didn't mean to infer Jack has social phobia, but
I mean, you're probably
Johnny Carson does,
probably not far off.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I wouldn't stick around after shows or anything. I would just pack up and head out and. But it's always different, like looking out on people versus being in it with people. Now, the one cool thing that I thought was really interesting was the exchange of energy that you get between the kind of like a feedback loop between attention from the audience and then you're kind of giving them something in return and that kind of cyclical thing, which I thought was pretty interesting.
It's a different kind of connection.
Yeah,
there is a connection. Like a comedian
absolutely.
connects with the audience. Good musicians connect with the audience. There
Absolutely.
is a connection, but not a personal.
Almost steer the audience.
Yeah.
In a way. But also, prime example is being alone in a country where you don't speak the language.
Oh, my.
Like in China, I was in a huge city that I could probably count the number of foreigners on like both my hands. And like, it's amazing how you just learn to tune out the things around you.
The noise, yeah.
Yeah, like, because you're like, I don't understand it anyway. So eventually, like I tell everybody, I didn't get culture shock going there. I got culture shock coming back. And I remember I was in Wilmington, and I was at a venue seeing some old bandmates play, and I just sat on the steps outside. It was like I could understand everybody walking by, and it was like a sensory overload because I'd shut that part off for so long.
They're really powerful experiences, Jack. I mean, it was funny talking to Ben. We started that particular episode, 265, on sharing experiences that we had where we felt alone. And you have to listen back on mine at Triadelphia Junior High School. Like, and I just went back there as I'm listening to you, Jack. I walked around an entire basketball court of kids, not knowing anybody, feeling just absolutely, utterly horrible. Like, feeling completely invisible. It was such a painful experience because no one talked to me, and I literally walked around a mass of people. Ben talked about, a classroom where everyone picked a partner, and he just wasn't picked. And everyone knows the whole high school or, middle school last person picked for the sport experience. And even, athletic people feel that because they're the last person picked on the team. It's just, it hurts. It's such a powerful, poignant experience.
It is and I might sound like a traditional old Southern dad here, but
Okay.
but I think those are character building experiences.
Oh, they can be. They can be. They can also be traumatic that people stay stuck with and incorporate negative thinking and self-loathing and stuff around it. I mean, it can go either way.
Yeah.
You do need to go to the prom and be rejected. You do need to ask out the girl or the guy and get rejected and deal with the pain and come over it. But it's tough.
And I'm gonna bring this up because it's very personal because I'm dealing with this right now because my son is about to go get to a I don't know if psychiatrist or psychologist to get an ADHD diagnosis. I don't know.
Okay. You both can
Both.
be
I
possibly.
thought so. And
Psychiatrist is medication.
and
Psychologist
dyslexia,
therapy.
and
person.
dyslexia, and he also has a speech issue.
That's a thing.
And so, like these experiences, he's already, and he's 6 years old, and not wanting to go to school.
Yeah. Right.
Like
Right.
I think it's good for him to be able to overcome that. But what do I do as a parent to instill that? Don't let it go the negative way. Use it as a positive thing, especially like with kids going through transformative times in their life. Like
It's a really good question, gosh, or thought, and I appreciate you sharing that, Jack, because I mean, it's really important that the kiddo that has, not real. I want to say clinical. I want to say legitimate. Those aren't really good words. That have distinguishable issues. I mean, now we say neurodivergent. I think that's so funny the way we say that. But, the distinguishable issue that creates added challenge that people typically don't have, they really need support. They just need normalized experience that this is something that you're not key, right? You're not alone, buddy, in feeling the way that you're feeling with this challenge, and you can learn how to engage this and overcome it, so that's a supportive, encouraging environment. That's really important when a kid is struggling that way. And Jack, I know that you'll do that because you're thoughtful and thinking and caring. Casey and I, a therapist that I know here, she's been on the show before, talked about, like, in hindsight, we can identify perpetrators of mass murder or injury events pretty much to a person, identify as a common trait, not one adult individual in their life that they feel supported or encouraged by. That's a common theme. It's that powerful. So, yeah, the struggle is real. It can be overcome, Southern dad, as you put it. But you really do need some encouragement and support and some caring knowledge to nudge people in a direction to learn and overcome.
And by Southern dad, I meant like rub some dirt in it.
Yeah.
It'll be fine. That kind of thing, right?
Well, we do that in West Virginia.
Okay. Yeah. Well, Southern. I'd say West Virginia is probably more southern than Florida.
It's the most northern of southern states.
True.
But it's the most southern of northern states.
There you go.
It's the most eastern of western states. And you could probably figure out the last. It's the most western of eastern states. Anyway, it's the heartbeat of the country, brother.
Beautiful.
It is a wonderful land. What are you thinking, Neil? You look like you got thoughts.
I had thoughts till we went into that weird.
Till went
path.
into that.
But no, I think that's the one thing Ben did talk about is when he talked about the theater group he was a part of, and you have a lot of introverted people that talked about, like, at the end of this production that he decided to go help out. It was like his niece or something, and this was after the Bachelor, so it was like this whole, like, why am I lowering myself to this standard? But then he's like, it's for my niece, I'll go do it. But at the end of the whole situation, he talked about this community you have here. You remember this film, remember what's going on, because you need to you're community builders because you know what it means to be a community, and that's where it's hard when you have, I was thinking about, with your kid, I'm like, one of the things as a parent you could try to do is if he has a friend that he really relates to, have the friend come over and let them hang out more to start building someone to hang out with.
Speaking of which, we just, one of our neighbors' kids, about the same age, has a speech issue as well, so they get together.
There you go.
There's a common, and that's
There
what I'm
you
trying to
go.
think. So when a kid struggles, you just have to find that one person or two people that they can relate to. You don't have to. I mean, I had like one close friend growing up. I never had more than that. That was just, I didn't need it. I'm introverted like you, and but you need to find that one person you can relate to. My friends always have their close friend. They have that one or two close friends that you need that. And so my suggestion is to, let your kid find that person and then nurture that relationship to give them someone right now while they have a hard time to deal with it. That's crucial, because that can be that thing in 10 years, when they're 18, it's like, oh, well, I made it through this tough time because I had this friend, and like life wasn't really that bad. It wasn't as bad as I thought because I had this bright, or it could just be a distraction, but you have to find ways to help them make it through it. So it's not a trauma experience. It's not a trauma event that gets deep seated and worse and worse and worse. You got to help them as they're young and resilient. The sooner you can kind of address it, help them move past and say, hey, this isn't the end of everything. To me, that's a lot of power.
That's really hard to do for a 6-year-old that has.
All you do to them is you just get them involved with their friends. You just get them involved, and that's all they have to care about is like life isn't that bad because.
Well, like I said, it's more of a like I feel bad because he's 6 years old and really does not want to go to school. Like that's
because of the anxiety that creates, or the turmoil that he's toiling with a little bit.
Feel like I know he said a few times he feels like people don't like him. Like, even though he has no problem making friends, but his perception is, that his teachers don't like him, and stuff like that. And I'm like, it's not gonna get any easier, buddy. Like,
well, it's the easy age, actually. Yeah, in middle school.
Yeah, this is the easiest you got it. And if you don't want to go now, like, we're gonna have problems. And so I'm trying to nip that in the bud.
It is a thing, right? Like it's and I think, Neil, you're right. It's to me, it's chipping away and chipping away. I mean, he's going to have a hard time. We do struggle, but I do want to push back a little bit. Because one of the things that I think is a myth with this idea of being introverted or whatnot, and I think I heard you say like I didn't need it, I don't want it, I didn't need it at that point, and I feel like that's kind of a misunderstood myth about close attachments. Because I think at the same time that you might believe that, because I hear that a lot, Neil. I'm not picking on Neil or you particularly. But I hear people hold this belief about themselves, and also at the same time feel loneliness and feeling alone and feeling the desperate feelings when something's going on. Because at the same time, I'm sure, because I know you, Neil, you would agree that it's a universal human need to be connected.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah. I mean, I was an introvert. So I had tons of friends. I just one at a time,
Exactly.
Right.
There's a difference in the way that we engage,
right.
But we have to be purposeful to seek out the attachments. And if you're not purposeful, I can't tell you how many times I'm dealing with the issue in therapy with depression that isn't really depression. It's just like there's no outlets. You're alone in your thoughts, and shit's in your head, and it just keeps spinning, and it causes a problem. And then you believe, well, yeah, I don't need other people because I don't want to deal with that pressure. I don't want to deal with that discomfort. And it can be discomfort, just like your son, to push out, into a relationship with somebody. Does that make sense, Neil? I mean, I'm pushing back a little bit at that.
Well, I guess the thing that I would say to that whole process is, I'm like Jack. I'm like, I only need one real thing, but I had friends that I could connect with. I had that friend or maybe two friends I could connect with. I know that I need someone like that. I know I need someone. I don't need a big group of friends. I don't need to have 500 friends.
A lot of acquaintances.
Right, exactly. So, because I've always kind of had that friend, and then now that I'm married, I have my wife. Like there's different because I've always seemed to have that piece of it.
That's weird that I literally like synchronicity type thing. I just saw a TikTok or something that was saying like women are like if a man loses a wife or a spouse that misses, then they are way less. They start going downhill really quick. However, women, because they have more emotional connections with other people, they're not as bad. And I thought that was interesting. I was like, probably right.
Well, it's kind of like the weird thing you get a lot of time where you get the older couple where if the wife passes away first, usually the men will follow shortly
That's
after.
because well, I think he was
where
saying
with
The broken heart syndrome.
right, exactly
Which is
where if the guy passes away, the woman can usually go longer.
well, and I
without
think
that
what he was
situation.
saying was the person in that video I was watching is most men say like their wife is their best friend. You know, especially the older you get into the marriage, versus women have multiple people like that they talk to.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's funny, Jack? I push back and get very curious about some of that as well, and I think there might even be some studies or some things that people have done to look at some of that type of a thing, and there may be statistical correlations and numbers that people have tabulated, but what I've really thought a lot about is I don't know how to do this without doing a dive on it. The emotionally focused therapy model that I operate with a lot, where people that come from close attachments operate from abandonment, where you pursue, or engulfment, where you withdraw, and patterns get developed in your life as it relates to that particular stance that you take. So, engulfment folks tend to want their space, and abandonment folks tend to want to be close and reach out to connect, because we're trying to feel emotional recovery and emotional safety. So the question becomes extroverted and introverted, if you will. Like, what are we trying to do when you're unsettled or uncomfortable or in a triggered state or something's going on with you? Abandonment folks will reach out, pursue to gain closeness for safety. Engulfment folks will withdraw and go into their own self, to create that safety, and that creates life patterns. So,
But isn't it
less than gender, way more in how you answer and operate on that level.
Is that what he's talking about in his book, though? Right? In the big, so you
go
have
ahead.
to know yourself. So you have to
100%, yeah.
withdraw first.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Before you can seek connection with people.
Right. You have to understand. Yeah. No. It's an excellent point. You're reconnected to self first. No longer alone. Part one. Reconnecting to yourself is huge, because you can't understand how to reconnect to other people if you don't know that process within yourself. Because you're right. People will sit there and think, I don't need people. I don't like people. That's another one I hear, Neil, all the time. I don't even like people. I don't want to deal with people. I had a guy, swear to gosh, he wanted to sell all of his life stuff, buy a freaking boat, go down to the Caribbean, and just sail from ship to ship to shore to shore.
I
That's all
am
they want
down.
to do. Right?
I've been trying to get my wife to be like, honey, if we ever get rich, private island, see everybody later. I'll talk to you when I talk to you.
I
That would be my
love picking
dream.
into that stuff, Jack, with people. Maybe you and
love
I can
that.
dance, because I will blow up that myth that is so alluring to you. The thing
That's me,
it
though.
is glorious for like a week,
No.
a month, or a year, or a decade. I am telling you, I will lay everything I own, ever owned, or will own on the idea that at some point, and it ain't a year, it's relatively
Maybe
close.
if I was younger at this
No.
age, I think I
Let's
would
dance
live
a
the
little bit
rest
here.
of my days.
Let's
happy.
dance a little bit.
But I
here.
would have my family with
Do you
me,
know the
right?
show Alone?
No.
Okay. Alone is a really cool show that I laugh inside myself, and it demonstrates this really, really well. It is a show where you get, like, I think $500,000 if you're the last person standing. They take you in obscure locations, and you are there. These are a bunch of survivalists, so they have like 5 pieces of equipment or whatever to sustain life and living, and they just stay there as long as they can, alone. Like, you have a camera that is your own, and you record yourself. And they come in, they check on you. So the producers come in and see what's going on and then leave like once a week or something like that. I mean, you are alone. And people are always tripping out, even the most engulfment-based personality. And I can tell, because I've thought about this a lot and looked at it and look at the way they're operating. People repeatedly suggest over and over again how surprised they are at missing their family and missing their relationships and missing their attachments and missing their friends and their life.
For sure.
And then there was one that they did where there was family members, 2 people, like a couple, a brother and brother, a father and son. There was a husband and wife that did this same thing, and they still struggled. And they're not able to get past about 3 months.
Yeah, no,
They just can't
I can
do it.
guarantee if you got me enough money to buy my own private island, I would live the rest of my life happy with my family, of course.
Yeah.
Like not.
But see, so you would still have someone.
Yeah, not alone. I'm not gonna go to I'm not gonna be castaway. Like.
But even then,
Wilson, I'm not gonna.
It's just a couple of people. It's not enough for the human psychology. I submit you'd probably go psychotic. Seriously,
Well,
I'm not
I don't
making a
see
joke.
anybody. You guys are probably most people I've seen, and while I'm fine,
If I could never have to do a Zoom meeting ever again, I'd be pretty happy.
dude.
All right. We have very little time left. I'm gonna give you a choice. I hope you choose one way or to the other.
Well, why don't you choose it?
Well, no, because I promise.
Okay, well, why don't you phrase the one that you want a little differently?
Yeah, that happens naturally with perception. I got a couple of book quotes that I think are cool to kind of kick around, and we could do it kind of quick. Taking a dive on a diagnosis thing seems kind of tough at this point, but there are some cool diagnostic stuff that I can definitely get into for 5-10 minutes. That would be kind of fun to kind of blow up myths or stereotypes, which is part of our show with all the things, because people use our buzzwords. They talk about our diagnosis stuff now because awareness is out, which is super cool, but they oftentimes totally blow up the way it was intended or what it really is. So is there a diagnosis like that or a word like that that's on your all's mind that we spend a couple minutes on, or should we do a couple of book show quotes?
Spontaneous combustion. How about that? Is that a good diagnosis?
That is not a psychological
DID.
diagnosis. Okay, right. That's a good example of one. Dissociative identity disorder. So which way, Neil? Make the call. DID for a couple minutes or a couple of quotes.
Let's see, what time is it? Let's do a quick thing on DID because I'm intrigued by that one.
It's fascinating, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, dissociative identity disorder. There is even a certain amount of intrigue, doubt, full-on distrust, even in my professional circles, about dissociative identity disorder, which used to be called multiple personality disorder. Okay, we've renamed it with the new diagnostic and statistical manual. Hey, flip the mic out and give me that book if you would, the purple book, because I'll look at it as we go with this. So this is, in my view, thank you, a legit real thing. Okay. I have colleagues that really enjoy working with this particular diagnosis, and it's tricky because it gets way kind of overcooked. Meaning, I feel like we get into the fascination of what happens with the psychological experience, and I'm fearful that as professionals we can conflate it, meaning make it bigger of a deal than it is. So that is a professional
Isn't it extremely
feeling I have.
rare too?
It is rarer. I don't know if I want to go extremely rare though, and here's why. If you conflate it and you think about you've ever heard of Sybil, right? No? Oh, wow. Have you ever heard of Sybil?
I've heard of Sybil.
Okay. This was a groundbreaking case that created our understanding of multiple personality disorder, where they mapped out her whole personality. It was a particular patient of whatever doctor, and it was a famous case that was basically a case study turned into a book. And she had several personalities that would come out. Alters is what we call them now, right? And so back to my concern, when we make this bigger than it can be, you can have like mapped out 50 personalities and all those things take over and you get splitting and and when really what it is related to is trauma and the psychological response that people have with an identity.
Do you know how often it is that patients with DID, like, is a good majority of them some form of child? Maybe if there was most likely a childhood trauma that they're then distancing themselves away from, which makes them act like a child.
So it's such we gotta come back to this. This will be a fun.
I'm sorry, man. You should probably
I know, right?
stick like a few episodes together with me. We could go into some crazy stuff.
Yeah, indeed. Because the answer is yes, particularly for the more involved mapping of somebody's system. It was probably child, but remember a little bit ago I said if you don't conflate it to being more dramatic than what it is, I think it's a whole lot more common than what we would really kind of think, and doesn't have to be just a kid level thing. Think about this. Is
it like an amnesia thing where they...
That's where I was going. Exactly. There is a very normal and accepted and common experience to traumatic experiences, and it's called repression. And that's exactly what you just said. We have fugue states where people, have a lottery and they freak out and they just literally enter into the state where they don't know who they are. It's like they trip out and you find them wandering. It's called a fugue state. We have repression where you literally just do not remember if something happened or not, right? That's a common reality. Even more common is something called disassociation. When you disassociate, we all do this, right? So when you drive to work every day, Jack, you take a right out of your neighborhood, go down the road, take a left, you go down the road. So you take a right, you go down the road, you take a left, you take a right, you go down the road. Every day you go that and do. And then on the weekend, you go to the grocery store and you go out and take a right, you go down the road, you take a left, and you're like, whoa, I went the wrong way. Because you disassociated and you're going to work.
Isn't that a form of a stroke?
I don't think so. No. It's just,
no, I'm thinking about like when you're driving down the highway and just the input is the same and then you just...
Yeah, it's not a stroke.
I think it's similar in the way the brain functions.
Your brain just goes into different states almost of subconsciousness. So dissociative identity disorder is a powerful example of this, where my colleagues that work with this more, have literally seen a right-handed person go into an alter personality and write flawlessly left-handed. Like there's crazy stuff like that is real. And, demonstratable. That's a little bit more rare, I suspect. But what's really, really more common is this reaction to trauma. And that's where I've described a little bit. But, yeah, it's a crazy world, DID.
Going back to my weirdness real quick before we start ending this thing up. How many people do you think have been injured or killed or whatever via exorcism because of DID?
Say that again. How many people have killed and exorcised or whatnot?
Yeah, like mistaken, like that, for DID.
I get you.
Because I know there was that one case where the priest like killed I think we studied about this in Abnormal Psych, to be honest, like where they rolled, they thought they were doing an exorcism and they rolled the girl up and and she ended up dying.
Yeah, back when we used to burn witches at the stake, there's mental health and diagnostics that are a part of that. If not like, in medieval times, like full on 100% of the time that was that or pretty close, I would argue. But that's just an opinion. Yeah, is the question, the answer to that. I think, there was traumatic experiences that people had. They had basic psychological reactions to these traumatic experiences that weren't understood. And anytime something's not understood, what do you think we do with that, Jack? It's not pretty. And so, yeah, unfortunately, we just didn't know what was going on with people that were really psychologically injured and acted oddly, and we just assumed that was demons.
Well, the
or
good thing
that
now,
was-
I think, since that thing, like people who are called in, from the church to do exorcism have to make them see some form of psychiatrist, psychologist.
Oh yeah,
first.
we have protocols now.
Yeah.
I mean, we have knowledge. We have,
Because of that case, I believe, if I'm not
Is
mistaken.
that so? I would believe that if you were to say that, that makes sense. Because now we do know and we screen things out, and we have mental health professionals that are with the Catholic Church, I believe, that do some of this type of stuff. Because exorcism, that's another one, right? Is that real? Some people have questions and doubt.
You talk to the priest, they seem to
validity
believe
of that. Yeah,
they
yeah.
believe it.
And it fits into my worldview. Neil, what are you hearing? Let me just tap into your thoughts here. Are you dissociative identity disorder? What says you hearing this?
You're gonna bring me up.
No, I think it's good. I mean, it kind of we talked about the alter ego book the other day, and you kind of to me kind of poo-pooed the idea of the alter ego, that you create different personalities for different purposes. So I guess the question I would say through the whole thing is your DID goes back to kind of the biggest deciding factor is the loss of remembering between the different personalities of the different things. Because, as you talked about your band, when you were on stage, you kind of probably had a different personality because you had to overcome that introvertedness, and you basically would go that way. Because once you got off the stage, it was different. You had to flip those switches. Now, when you get
It's
to
a
DID,
performance. The same thing with this.
right?
with
So the
Bachelor.
idea we talked about in one of our things, the alter ego, where you create alter personalities to where you basically, like in certain situations, it allows you to cope and deal with that, or to succeed, or to push yourself. And so the idea is, well, it's not as clinical as a DID, but it's still the same. It's a coping mechanism you create to help you survive. It's not the extent of losing track of yourself, but it's still the same idea, just to a lesser extent, very watered down. And so it's very interesting. Would you say that the deciding difference between something like having different alter egos versus DID is the fact that the complete disconnect of personality A versus personality B? You can't remember personality
They're
A doesn't know
I
personality
think
B.
sometimes they're aware of each other and sometimes they're not. Right?
Correct. It moves around. I think particularly when you the term alters are a part of dissociative identity disorder treatment. Alter personality is an adopted term, which is what I think we were talking about more, Neil, than the alter personalities in DID or multiple
Right.
personalities. It's actually sort of two different things that where the words were hijacked, and I think people talk about it.
Right, but when you look at when you break it down, it's completely different.
I think so.
And
I think
speaking
so.
of, I think the more rare cases when it does get that extreme, there's always like it seems like a protector of another. Like when they're
There's one of the personalities can do that and all. Yeah, listen to the criteria. And I actually haven't read this in a long time, so I'm curious in a new one because I started out with other diagnostic manuals. But I'm purposely doing the second symptom that we look for first rather than the first. The second one, reoccurrent gaps in the recall of everyday events, important personal information, and or traumatic events that are inconsistent with ordinary forgetting. So again, I read the second one first because that's one of the things I said, right? Like it is a very common like memory gap, repression, protection mechanism with really crappy
I've
events.
got
That's part of this.
a great example of this in a film that you can go out and watch, and I know he's very familiar with it. Moon Knight.
Oh yes, that's a
Moon Knight?
very
Yeah,
interesting.
go watch that
yes.
Disney Plus show. Like he actually like chained himself to the bed and put sand down so because he loses, he goes into another altar.
Yeah,
right?
and wants to catch it or whatever.
Yeah, like
Yeah, Yeah, I wonder how legitimate it is in the way they present it, but it sounds interesting.
That's a messed up comic, by the way.
So the first set we look for is disruption of identity characterized by two or more distinct personality states, which may be described in some cultures, Jack, as you said, as an experience of possession. The disruption in identity involves marked discontinuity in a sense of self, so there has to be that, and a sense of agency, again, controlling oneself, accompanied by related alterations in affect, behavior, consciousness, memory, perception, cognition, and or sensory motor function. So there's a lot that really comes in and sort of takes over in the personality. So that's one and two. The third, symptoms cause clinically significant distress. And the rest is like, basic things that we look for. So the first one really kind of gets at driving at the intricacies of this.
And to dive into it, you have to go long term with them, because you could easily have people probably play it off, try to say I have it. So you have to go long term to make sure that there's a real disconnect, right? You have to really see that. Like,
I think so.
This isn't something you can just do a quick test and be done with it. This is like a long term thing to really track.
It's trauma, in particular, if there's any significance of it, it's probably significant trauma experiences. It's not like you don't split your whole personality out with simple circumstances that you go through. I mean, you're molested by your uncle age 3 to 13 in a dark.
Abuse.
Yeah, there's a lot of trauma that people get into that create this. So, yeah, that's an interesting one. Good choice. I'm glad we went in that direction. But it is
I pulled
time.
that one right out. I was just like,
DID. It is time to wrap up. Jack, thanks for hanging out with us.
Thanks for having me.
Able to come back maybe if we need
Hey,
to.
man, just holler. I'll make some time.
We'll keep that in mind.
It's not like
then.
you guys are far away.
Fantastic. Well, guys, this has been the month in review for March. We will see you next week.